T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Morning, everybody, and happy Friday. Hope everybody had a safe and happy Thanksgiving. We're here to you on Friday morning, mainly because of the implications that the Friday games carry behind them and the Saturday slate as well. So we're going to talk to you guys this morning, get you ready for all of Week 13 games. We had the Egg Bowl last night. Mississippi beats Mississippi State on the road in a classic rivalry matchup. Slade, what game are you most looking forward to in this rivalry weekend?
I think that, obviously, I'm going to go with Ohio State and Michigan.
Yeah.
I think that they're the biggest game of this week, and I think in the last 10 years, it's the biggest game that we're going to see leading into the playoff. I just think that two powerhouse teams, there's all the drama that's behind Michigan and Ohio State possibly being the team to look into them, and so I just think that's the game with the biggest implications. What about you?
Yeah, that definitely carries a lot of weight. I think the one I'm looking forward to the most is actually Florida State and Florida. Obviously, with Jordan Travis down, there's a lot of questions around Florida State. I'm interested to see how well they can play without him, especially going on the road to a very hostile environment. Florida has their backs against the wall. They need to get a win if they want to go to a bowl game, so they're in desperation mode. And if Florida State ends up losing, that can shake up a lot of the landscape of what we see in the college football playoff race. So I think that's the one I'm most excited for, outside of course, Ohio State, Michigan. What we did not, this is our second episode this week. Slade and I did Blitz Boys on Monday and released it, so we didn't get a chance to talk about the college football playoff rankings. So we're going to do that now. We're going to take an updated look at the top 25 here. Georgia is still the number one team. Washington jumps Florida State from 5 to 4. Those are really the only big changes. What are your overall thoughts on the top 25 that we got this week?
I think it's unfortunate for Florida State that they went behind Washington. Now, I think that this is just setting up the college football committee to have the possibility to leave them out, even if they do go undefeated. I mean, we had talked about it off of the podcast, and you had said that you don't think that the undefeated ACC champion gets left out, but I think that they're capable of making dumb decisions, and we've seen it before.
The more I thought about, Washington does have a very impressive resume. They beat the number 6 team, obviously in a very close game. They've also beaten another ranked team, or 2 ranked teams actually, with Arizona and Oregon State now. So I do feel like they have the better resume. And as unfortunate as it is that the committee's saying that the Jordan Travis injury has no influence on it, we both know better. And maybe this was enough for them to be like, well, it can't be that controversial to flip them, just because Washington, I feel like, does have a better resume.
They do.
And if they're able to win out and win the Pac-12 championship and they're undefeated, I could see them, getting in over Florida State. But there's 2 teams ahead of both of them still. That one of them is going to lose this weekend, and so that'll absolutely shake things up. And we shall wait and see. The only kind of issue I have with this top 25 as we're looking at it is, and I said this last week, Tennessee should not be ranked in the top 25. They shouldn't have been ranked after the Missouri loss. They shouldn't be ranked now. That was kind of the most upsetting thing to me. Other than that, I'm really fine with this top 25. I think Oklahoma State's still a little high. I understand they beat some good teams, but they've also had some pretty bad losses. They got blown out on the road by a non-top 25 team as well. So I feel like Oklahoma State's a little high at 20th. Other than that, we sit here, we look at the very bottom with Tulane and Liberty. Very interesting there, because Tulane has a huge matchup this weekend with UTSA. And then they also, if they win that matchup, they need to go to the American Conference Championship and win that. Whereas Liberty, they saw their conference championship game, but if it goes like it did earlier in the regular season with New Mexico State, we could be looking at Liberty getting the bowl bid for the New Year's Six out of the group of 5. What are your thoughts on those two being so close together?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tight race. I do think that Tulane's going to pull it out today and kind of set themselves apart. But yeah, I think it's great for Liberty to be up there. What are they, 11-0 now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's great for their school and everything. I just don't think that they have. I think it's like a contest to see who has the most social backing right now when it comes to the committee, and I think that Tulane has that over Liberty side.
Yeah,
That's absolutely that.
So let's go ahead and let's look now at the college football playoff scenarios. Everybody's been talking about these all week and the possible implications they can carry. We got into debate the other day talking about it. So we'll start with the big one. Is if you got the winner of Michigan, Ohio State, pretty much they're going to be locked in as long as they take care of Iowa. And then you're going to have an undefeated ACC champion. From there on, you have 3 one-loss teams that have won their conference championship game. And then most likely in this scenario, Georgia loses to Alabama in that conference championship game. So you have another 12-1 team sitting there, a non-conference champion though. Who in your eyes gets in? So in this scenario, we're talking about undefeated Michigan, undefeated Ohio State, one of those two, undefeated Florida State, and then a one-loss Oregon, one-loss Texas, one-loss Bama, one-loss Georgia. Who gets in? Who gets left out?
Yeah, so I feel bad because it sucks for Florida State, but I do think that Florida State is the least likely, in my opinion, that deserves to be in that conversation. I mean, I think Rudemaker. I think that he is going to be good, and I think that he has the possibility to do like a Cardell Jones did for Ohio State. I mean, this is the perfect situation. Someone that has playing time that did great last week. I mean, it was against a high school team, but yeah, I just think that people want to see the big matchups. I think Georgia is capable of doing that. I think Georgia sticks a nail in all of this and just beats Alabama and silences that thing. But I mean, Alabama's been on a tear. I think that Texas, my hope is that they make it into the playoff. They win out. They make it into the playoff. I think Ohio State or Michigan, whichever one wins there, gets in. I think the loser of that game is unfortunately out of the playoff just because, I mean, they don't have the strength of schedule that some other teams have. Like we just talked about, Washington is playing strength of schedule, and I mean, they have the resume, and Arizona has really helped that out with the way that they've played this season. So I mean, I think the loser of the Big Ten is the one that's left out in that situation. But yeah, I wish it was Florida State because I don't think that Florida State's going to be able to compete playoff the way that the rest of those teams were.
And so here's my question. Looking at Florida State before I give my answer. Let's say they take care of business this week against Florida. It's a rivalry game, so let's say they win by 7. They go to Charlotte. They play Louisville. They beat Louisville by 24. Do you think there's still an argument saying that Florida State isn't, capable of handling themselves in the playoff situation?
No.
If they get like a trademark stamp win on it, we took care of business. We're still here. Do you think then that the cries become louder that you can't hold us out because of the JT injury?
Yeah, no, I don't think they're going to get left out. I personally feel they should be left out. I think that they're going to drop an egg then in the playoff. I think that they're very capable of doing that. If the spread is 6.5 today against Florida, they can do the 6.5 or 7, whatever, And then I think that they're very capable of beating Louisville. Louisville is not that great of a team. They just have a schedule this year in terms, and that's how they've gotten to where they're at. But I just think that we're going to end up seeing similar to what we saw with Michigan last year, and they just go into the playoff. It's a disappointment of a game that once they get to that big level game. I just think that they're not the team to put in the situation. They don't have the experience of playing big style games.
Right. So as far as we have the 2 undefeated teams and then 3 or 4 one-loss teams. I think Georgia gets left out in that situation because you're talking about one-loss Power 5 champions versus the one-loss non-Power 5 champion. As great as Georgia has looked this season, I don't think, with the way the committee has laid this out from the beginning, is one of the main criteria that you need to be able to make the playoff is be a Power 5 champion. Now, granted, we've had one-loss non-Power 5 champions before, but I don't think the field has ever been this strong in front of them in this case before, in that same exact reason. I think, honestly, if it comes down to Oregon, Texas, and Alabama between those three for 2 spots. As much as I don't want to say this, I think Oregon gets left out because you can't leave Alabama out after they just beat the number 1 team in the
Team that
conference.
hasn't lost 30 games.
Right. You can't leave out a team that just beat the number 1 team in the country. And then if you look at Texas beat Alabama head to head. Now I know there's a lot of talk about, well, Texas could beat Alabama or Alabama could beat Texas now if they played again. And that's a you can make that argument all you want, but Alabama should have played better to start the year. They should have beat Texas at home if they don't even want this to be, kind of a conversation right now. So I think with that head-to-head victory, and you need to respect that, is Texas gets in, and I think you look at everything else, and I think the way it plays out, Oregon can end up, finishing the season with 2 ranked wins if they're able to win out, beating Oregon State and then Washington. They avenge their only loss. There's definitely an argument there, but I just feel like the committee overvalues the SEC. And I can see both of those teams making the jump over Oregon just because I don't think you can put Alabama in and leave Texas out because of that head-to-head victory.
Do you think that changes if Oregon State won last week? They go into this
100%
with an actual chance at being in the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah. No, I think that'd be a great and I think the one thing helping Oregon the most right now is the fact I think it's better that Washington won. Because you want to face Washington, and they still could have faced Washington even if Oregon State won last week. Then Oregon would still need to win this week, and then that would set up the rematch with Washington. But the best case scenario for Oregon is to end up playing Washington in the conference championship game because you need to avenge that one loss. And if you're going to go play them on a neutral field and you beat them, if they beat them by 3 or more, then hey, we lost on the road by 3 points, and now we went to a neutral site. We beat them by 3 or more. Again, very strong argument, and I think they should get in. But just knowing how the committee leans SEC heavy, I feel like, and overvalues SEC schedules, and so I could see them putting, Alabama just beat the number 1 team. They get put in. Well, you can't leave Texas out at that point because Texas beat Alabama head to head, and I think that's the way it would shake out in Oregon left sitting at home.
I agree in that Oregon State proved Oregon in that scenario, just because if they had won that, then Oregon gets a battle against a top 10 team, a rival. They go out there and do what they've done to teams all year. They've spread by at least 2 scores, and that's the problem for Oregon is that they have been beating teams by 20 to 40 points, whatever the deal is each week, but the teams are also teams that then go out this week by 30 to another crap.
Yeah. And I will say this before we move on. Every year we kind of hype up these like big playoff scenarios that we could possibly get, and then things always shake out where it's pretty standard getting in. There might be a conversation for the 4th and final spot. So I'm not holding my breath that we're going to end up with 4 one-loss teams fighting to get into those final 2 spots. Especially if we'll have to see how Florida State looked this week. But Louisville's looked very good at times. That's going to be a difficult game for Florida State to get by. Obviously, again, Oregon has already lost to Washington, so a lot of people are already kind of writing that off. But Oregon's looked better since then. Listen, until Oregon wins that game, you can't make that argument.
Right.
And then the other ones, like we just said, Alabama has to play Georgia. Georgia's looked like one of the best teams in the country the past couple of weeks. Texas needs to. It's going to be a very difficult battle against one of the Oklahoma schools, we assume. There's a rare chance Kansas State can slip in there. And obviously we saw how close that game was as well. So there's a long way to go, even though we have only two short weeks left.
I think people also kind of forget because I've seen a lot of chatter that this year's a lot different. That usually there's 2 teams solidified in, and then there's only 2 spots available. Really, 1 depending on who wins the Big Ten game. They're just assuming that person's third. I think it's the same as usual. I think if Georgia goes out and does lock up the 1 seed, I think whoever Ohio State locks up the 2 seed, that will be able to score more than 6 Iowa.
Yeah.
And then I think that the next 2 spots are just determined on conference winners, like you had said. I think that at that point, if Texas run the table, but I think that if Florida State's able to run the table, I think they're the definite 3, and then the spot is for the 4th seed. And Washington State. I mean, if Washington State wins out, Washington State's the 4th team, and there's no questions. There's no scenarios.
Exactly. So let's move on. So this will be the final weekend of regular season Pac-12 action. The final game will be UCLA and Cal. They're playing at 10:30 on Saturday night. And the final game on the Pac-12 network, which I thought was very surprising, is going to be Notre Dame at Stanford. Notre Dame has never played a game on the Pac-12 network. And so the final send-off for the Pac-12 network, as we know it now, will be Notre Dame at Stanford. So good luck to everybody trying to find that game, especially if you're Notre Dame fans tomorrow night. But throughout the season, we've kind of seen the Pac-12 put their best on display. You and I talked before the season in the Pac-12 preview, kind of reminiscing on the past. From this season alone, what has been kind of your favorite memory or your favorite storyline that with the Pac-12 going away, you're kind of never going to get again from the West?
Yeah, I mean, I think the zero defense, the cannibalism that we see every year, but I think that the way that everyone was just right on Colorado at the beginning of the season, and they were the story of the year for the first 4 games. And then after that, it kind of fell off, and now everyone's like, oh, did you see that Colorado lost to Stanford by 30 or 40 on Friday night 2 weeks ago? Like, I think that Dion did what he needed to do there. He brought all the eyeballs, all the funding, all the stuff that he needed. But I think that, and just what I always say, the cannibalism of that conference is just crazy. I think that we could still see craziness tonight with Stanford against USC. USC is not a good team.
Yeah.
I mean, we could see Lincoln Riley in year 2 knock over 500, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. And I think just to touch on Colorado really quick, I think obviously Dion, over-delivered in the first couple weeks, and people who have never really paid attention to either Colorado football or just college football in general suddenly put their eyes on, and they kind of overbought the hype. Just realized we've probably been very quiet this whole time. Kind of probably overbought the hype a little bit, and so now all of a sudden, they look good. They're 4-0. They head into Oregon. And it also speaks to how good the Pac-12 was this year, that Colorado had hard times finding ways to win some of those games.
They did.
But I think Dion did more this season than what normal, sane people would have expected of him. He took over a one-win team, and I understand they completely scrapped that roster and that, they restarted. But still, it's going to take time to get them to gel and all these different scenarios and stuff. I'm expecting Colorado to be even better next year when they're going into the Big 12. I think they're going to look very good, and they're going to continue to grow. But thinking Dion was going to take them to a national championship in year 1 was a little overboard. But still, I think he improved that team from what they were. I'd give him an A+, or I'd say A-, I guess, because some of those games they definitely should have won. The Stanford one, they let them in after being up 30 points. So I don't think Colorado or Dion should be shamed for how the season kind of unfolded from going 4-0.
Yeah, they definitely overperformed.
Yeah, absolutely.
From what they were expected.
But for this year, my favorite Pac-12 memories and things I'm going to miss. Arizona just kind of coming out of nowhere, the slow start to the season, and now they've exploded onto the scene. They hung around with Washington, hung around with USC, and we're like, oh, this is going to be a team that they're almost right there. And now we're looking at them, and they can still make the Pac-12 championship. If they win today and Oregon, or they win tomorrow and Oregon loses today, Arizona is going to go to the Pac-12 championship, somewhere that none of us thought they would be after how they started the season. And I feel like the Pac-12 has been that conference of surprise contenders year in and year out, and I feel like that's one thing that we're losing. That's really going to suck more than anything, like losing the Civil War, possibly. The Apple Cup's been extended and renewed, so there's that as well. But that's what I think I'm going to miss the most. Let's move on now to our cash out picks for this week. We're going to look at the updated standings here. Nick sits at 15-14. Slade, you're at 9-18-1. And I'm sitting here at 13-16-1. We're going to look at Nick's picks first. Nick is going to take Ohio State plus 3.5 at Ohio State, at Michigan. And then he's also taking the Iowa at Nebraska under 25. This is now the lowest over-under in college football history. That's the third time this season Iowa has set a new over-under record for the lowest point totals. And they've hit both times before that this season. So I've actually already put this bet in on my slip. Slade, let's go ahead and look at your picks for today.
Yeah, I'm hoping to go 1-1 again. I'm just kind of riding that out since going 0-2 or 0-2-1 early in the season every week. JMU, I think that they have a bounce back game this week. I said that I thought that they were going to kind of have a hard time with one of these games, whether it was last week against App State or this week against Coastal. I think that this week they're gonna pounce back on it and show that they're a really great team, that it was bound to happen. They weren't going to go undefeated on the season and be able to claim that national championship, I don't think. But I think that they're going to go out and they have something to prove today, and I think that they're going to try and do that with the -9 against Coastal. And then the other one is Missouri. Missouri's been a great team, probably the most under the radar team that only has what do they have? 3 losses now in the season.
2 losses, yeah.
I mean, just a really under the radar team, and I think that they play a really bad team in Arkansas today, and so I think that the 9 points should be doable for them.
Yeah. And just to look at Missouri real quick, we watched that bowl game. That was our Swear Jar Sweat last year. We watched them play Wake Forest, and leaving that game, we weren't really excited about Missouri at all. It didn't nothing of promise kind of showed in Missouri. Yeah. Came into this season, they had another grueling schedule ahead of them, and it's like, is Missouri even going to make a bowl game? And now here they are. We're talking about them in a New Year's Six bowl. It looked very impressive. Drinkwitz has really implemented his program and got this team to play at a very high level. And so shout out to Missouri and how they've looked this season. For my cash out picks, I'm going to take Memphis, 13-point favorite on the road at Temple. Memphis is coming off a devastating loss to SMU, kind of ruined their chances of making the American Championship game. Temple is very bad. Temple is very, very bad at football this year. They've gotten a couple wins here and there, but I fully expect Memphis to kind of take out their frustrations on Temple and end their regular season on a high note before they head off to their bowl game. They didn't get to send their seniors off the proper way at home last week. I think they're going to do it this week on the road. This is a very good team on both sides of the football. We saw what SMU did to Temple, and we saw how close that game was between Memphis and SMU. So that's why I really like Memphis to cover the 13-point spread on the road. And my other pick is Washington State plus 16 against Washington. I don't think they win this game, but Washington has really let some bad teams kind of hang around at points this year. You look at the Arizona State game, you look at the Stanford game, 2 very bad teams that they let hang around. They've looked better the past couple weeks. I look at that USC game and the Oregon State game, but they were still pretty close games. I think Washington State is going to come out very determined, very hungry to take it to the rivals. The last time in conference, but not the last time they're going to play. As we already mentioned, that has been extended. And so I really look forward to Washington State kind of keeping this to a one possession, maybe even a 10-point game. And so I like them to cover the 16-point spread. Time now for our upset alert picks this week. Looking at the first one, we got Nick here. And I will show you the standings really quick as we get going. Nick has 9 points. I'm 2 points back. And Slade, you're still sitting there at 2 points. Nick's upset alert this week. He's going to take Boise State, 7-point favorites at home versus Air Force. This is a game we will pick later. But I was honestly surprised to see Boise State favored by this much with how hyped Air Force has been all year. But Boise State has really looked good the past couple weeks. They even fired their coach, and they went out and they looked even better against Utah State last week. So this is going to be a very fun matchup later. Slade, give us your upset alert this week.
Yeah, for this one, I went with Kansas State at 10.5 favorites against Iowa State. I think that Iowa State, while they haven't been great, have kind of stuck around in the Big 12, in terms of having that possibility to sneak in at the end. I just think that Kansas State has a chance to go out and, win the game and kind of give themselves that opportunity to make it into the Big 12 championship game. I think this is where Iowa State comes in and is like, no, we're going to take that away from you. My upset alert pick this week, I am going to go with Utah. They're at home against Colorado, 20.5-point favorites. It's not, we don't know yet if Shadur is going to play. He hurt his wrist last week in that game against Washington State where they got blown out. But Utah is going to their 5th-string quarterback now. And so while I don't expect Colorado to put up a bunch of points, I don't expect Utah to just kind of blow them out of the water. I understand they're very good in every other asset of the game, but when you're on your 5th-string quarterback, there's only so much that offense is going to be able to do. So I really like Colorado to keep this game close, and who knows, maybe they kind of send their season off on a high with a big win on the road. But 20.5 was a little too much for my liking to take Utah outright in this game. I will say I'm going to move him down to 4th string just because you can't even count Cam Rising as a quarterback.
That's true.
Even though there was hope for him to come since like week 4, he was never stepping on the field.
So those are the upset alert picks for this week. Let's go ahead, and these are the updated pick standings. Slade, you're 8 games up on me, and then you are also 3 games up on Nick. You started to pull away from both of them. We'll have to wait and see if you can put your stamp on us this weekend. So let's go ahead and get into our picks this week. First game up we have is Iowa at Nebraska. This will be 12 o'clock today, Friday, on CBS. All times are Eastern. So first up, Nick is going to take Nebraska. Slade, who do you like in this one?
Yeah, I went with Nebraska here as well. I think that, or George got him mixed up a little bit.
Okay.
Nick went with Iowa because he loves Iowa in the under, but I went with Nebraska because I think that Iowa doesn't really have anything to play for this week. They're already locked into the Big 12 or the Big 10 championship game. I think that they play every game way too close, and so I don't know. I think that this is where they kind of get caught in their slow pace of play and just milking the clock out.
Yeah. So yeah, I got these backwards. So Slade and I are actually taking Nebraska. Nick took Iowa. I really like Nebraska to come out and play very determined football today. Again, this is going to be a very slow grind, but we've seen in the last couple of years, Nebraska has found ways to exploit some holes in the Iowa defense. And again, they're going to be very determined to come out and win this so they can punch their ticket to a bowl game. First time since 2014. They've let chances slip through their fingers the last 3 weeks now. They should have beat Michigan State. They should have beat Maryland. They should have beat Wisconsin. And they don't want to head into the offseason with the shoulda, coulda, woulda.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's going to be some there because, there's some possibility they can sneak into the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
But I really like them to come out and play very determined football today and get their ticket punched to a bowl game. Next game up we have is UTSA at Tulane. The winner will go to the American Championship game. If SMU loses, then it's a tiebreaker between SMU and whoever loses this game. But if SMU beats Navy, they will punch their ticket as well. So a lot on the line. UTSA has really turned their season around after that slow start. Tulane has kind of stumbled over the past couple weeks, and then last week they once again looked good. They covered the spread when I said they wouldn't. So Nick is going to take Tulane in this one. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I went with Tulane here as well. I think that their team is just kind of starting here, and they're going to, kind of finish the season out strong. I think they had a couple of games definitely that they were playing slow, not really their Tulane style of offense, but I think they are back on track, and I think they do it again today.
Yeah. This one I had to flip a coin for because it's very hard. Again, UTSA has really improved since their rough start to the season. Frank Harris has once again looked like one of the best quarterbacks in college. This offense has looked very good. And Tulane, while that we understand the brand that they've carried for the last 2 seasons now, again they've really stumbled down the stretch this year. They haven't been winning and beating teams the way they're supposed to. They let a lot of really bad teams hang around. Again, they blew a 28-point lead and a 35-point lead in back-to-back weeks and struggled to hang on to those games. And I couldn't decide, and I probably should have went with Tulane here, with the controversy surrounding the head coach at UTSA, and if he's going to leave or not, that might distract UTSA. Mm-hmm. But I still need to make up some games on Slade here. So I'm going to take UTSA to win on the road. This will be 3:30 on ABC today on Friday. Next game we have up is in the Mountain West. Huge matchup here. The winner will essentially go to the Mountain West Championship game. So Air Force, they've skidded the last couple of weeks. They lost to Army. They've lost 3 straight now. Boise State has really turned their season around. They looked very good with their interim head coach last week. And you wonder if this team's going to continue to play to this level going forward. Nick is going to take Air Force. Slade, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm going with Air Force as well. I think they're on a 3-game skid since that loss to Army. And I mean, the UNLV is a good team, so that loss is reasonable. It was a very close game. The Army was just crazy to see that. And then the following week against Hawaii, I just think this is where they turn it around. And I think that there needs to be some more respect on them also. I mean, putting them as 7.5-point dogs against Boise, I think it should be a much closer spread for that. I'm
going to take Boise State here with Air Force. I really like this team, and I still do. And I would like to see them, punch their ticket to the Mountain West, especially with how much we are hyping them up this whole season. But you also wonder how mentally affected they're being by the fact that, they were ranked in the college football playoff poll. Now all of a sudden they've lost 3 straight. They're on the verge of missing out on the Mountain West Championship game. And Boise State has everything in front of them. If they win this, they're going to go to, they punched their ticket to a bowl game last week. But they can still go to the Mountain West Championship game.
Which is crazy. Sitting
Yeah,
at
they
6 and
can
5.
still salvage their season. And they're sitting here. They fired their head coach. And with all the disappointment that's been kind of behind them so far, there's still so much ahead of them this year. So I like Boise State to win at home. And I think that was kind of the other deciding factor. So I'm going to take Boise State in that one. That's 4 o'clock on FS1. At 7:30 on ABC, we have Texas Tech at Texas. There's a lot of trash talk in the offseason, especially from the Big 12 commissioner, telling the Red Raiders to go down to Austin and beat Texas in the final week. So we're going to have to wait and see if that happens. Nick is going to take the Longhorns at home. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, in this one, I'm going with Texas. I think that it's going to be close. I think the spread is 13.5 points or something like that. I think Texas Tech is going to keep it close. I think Quinn Ewers is not back to 100% yet. I think it's been very apparent in his last game. And I think it's going to be close, but I think that Texas is I hope that they're smart enough not to be looking ahead to next week, that they're willing to play this game and figure out next week based on whatever happens in the Big 12 this weekend,
Yeah. And looking at Texas too, I mean, they've looked like the better team the past couple of weeks through 3 quarters. And then they really kind of struggled to put them away in the 4th quarter. They let those teams sneak back into the game. I really think of that TCU game. They were up 26 to like 12. And all of a sudden you look up and it's 29-26 and you're like, what's going on here? And so
which they should have lost in overtime.
And so I'm going to take Texas too, but I agree with you. I like Texas Tech to keep this close. Texas struggling to put these teams away. So I'm taking the Longhorns to win, but I do like Texas Tech to cover. Another game we have tonight is we have Penn State at Michigan State. Penn State still alive for a possible New Year's Six bowl. And so Nick is going to take the Nittany Lions. This game is 7:30 on NBC. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with Penn State as well. I think that this is on par for them. I mean, 10, 11, and 2 every season is what James Franklin is capable of. I think that he's going to do it again. They'll go and win their bowl game. I mean, these are the things he's good at. He already got past the things he's horrible at. He lost both games, and so he's back on track. We're ready to go. And we got to look forward to losing games next year again.
I'm going to take Penn State in this one. Michigan State has been a feel-good story. They've won a couple of games that they weren't supposed to, that Nebraska game, and then they won last week as well against Indiana in a very dramatic fashion. Indiana misses the game-tying field goal as time expires. So I really like Penn State to kind of go there, and I think this is going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a very sloppy game. Both teams kind of aren't really playing anything but for pride right now. And so I like Michigan State to keep it close, but I think Penn State gets the win on the road. Last game up for Friday, we have Oregon State at Oregon, the Civil War. I think we're back to calling it that now. Everybody but the schools are calling it that. But this game will be 8:30 tonight on Fox. Nick is going to take Oregon. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with Oregon here as well. The 13.5 point spread, I think that Oregon is able to pull away in the 4th maybe to get that. But I mean, we talked about transfer portal winner last week, and I had said DJ Ungale or whatever it was the guy. Yeah. He went out and just played like crap last week. I mean, he had the opportunity to win that game, to play up to his level, and he didn't. He's done this 2 other times this season. Those were their 3 losses, and they bounced back big the next week. So I think that that's what they're going to be able to do this week is bounce back big rivalry game. But I do think that Oregon is one of those 3 teams we talked about that has flipped a switch, and they're on that next level. And I think that as long as, just like I had said with Texas, as long as they're not looking ahead to the following game, I think they take care of business today.
Yeah. With Oregon State, obviously last week kind of dealt a blow to any of their postseason hopes, the Pac-12 championship. And so this is their 2nd year in a row now. They're going to have a chance to spoil Oregon, everything Oregon has in front of them, whether it be the Pac-12 title. This year, we're also talking about playoff implications for Oregon. And there's no word yet on if this rivalry game is going to get extended like the Apple Cup did. And so who knows if this is the last time that they're going to play for, a very long time. And so I think Oregon State keeps this close, but of course I'm going to take Oregon to win at home. And I don't like the 13-point spread. Everybody online has been talking this week saying, Oregon State's defense doesn't match up well. Well, they found a way last year to match up well and really harness in that Oregon offense and make a huge comeback in the second half. They're a very opportunistic team. If you give them even an inch of daylight, they'll bust that door open and they'll come storming back, keep the game close. So I like it to be a close game, but I think Oregon pulls out the win.
I think a big thing in this one also is that everyone has talked about Oregon State's defense and that they're really able to disrupt the run game of their opponent. I think that it's much different in this game because Bo Nix could have 4 touchdowns and 200 passing yards in the first half by that time before they even think about running.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it won't matter if they have a hard time running the ball, because they're already up by 2-3 scores.
Yeah. Moving over to Saturday's games, we're going to start with the biggest game, obviously, Ohio State at Michigan. This will be noon on Fox. Big noon kickoff, as it's been the staple the past couple of years. Nick is going to take Ohio State on the road. Slade, who do you got?
I went with Michigan here. I think that there's so much controversy, so much going on, and I think that fans would hate it so much if Jim Harbaugh gets to celebrate from the hotel room, or well, at this point, probably from his office on campus, and everyone that has been complaining and, I just think that this is Michigan's chance to, kind of stick it to them. And then it kind of draws it out, the narrative again, like, oh, this cheating team's in the playoffs, So I just think it goes with everything. I think that I hope that Michigan, I do this based on thinking that Michigan has been conservatively playing the last 2 weeks. I think that they conservatively just did not throw the ball against Penn State because they could. They didn't have to. And then I think last week, Maryland can be good. Yeah. And so I think that that's what happened last week. I think also them just kind of trying to kind of hold on to their secret plays, those plays that could be high percentage yardage plays. And so I think that they're going to pull out all the stops today against Saturday against Ohio State.
Yeah. This was a very difficult game for me to pick because I feel like the teams are very evenly matched across the board. They both have outstanding defenses. They both have really good run games. And the quarterback play, I feel like, is very similar. J.J. McCarthy can look like a Heisman contender one week and then turn around and not look as great as he did last week against Maryland. And McCord is the same exact way. He can go out there, have very impressive performances, and then turn around and struggle the next week. So this is I feel like the most even matchup across the board that we've had between these two teams in the past couple of years. And I had to flip the coin for it again. The coin came up, said Ohio State. So I'm going to take Ohio State this week. I did this last year and Michigan won. So maybe this is, a good omen. And again, another chance for me to possibly make up a game on you or, fall even farther back. The other big rivalry game we have on Saturday is the Iron Bowl. We have Alabama at Auburn, 3:30 on CBS. This might be the final time these two teams play on CBS, as crazy as it is to say that sentence. Nick is going to take Alabama on the road. Slade, who do you got?
I'm going with Alabama as well. I think they're the other one of the other teams in that 3 teams. I mean, it's Georgia, Alabama, and Oregon that have flipped a switch and set themselves apart. I mean, I think if this was a who does everybody think deserves to be in the college playoff at this moment in the season, I think that they would be in there even if they lost to Georgia by a couple points, but that's not how it works. And so I think that they've got to get through this game to have that chance to fight for their opportunity next week.
Yeah. I'm going to take the Tide as well. Nick Saban has his team very focused on their mission for now. Jalen Milroe has been playing like a Heisman contender. If he would have started the season better, just like Alabama, I think we're talking about them in a different light. And so I really like how Alabama's played. I think they're going to win. Now, I do think Auburn covers a 13-point spread. Auburn's been a surprise team at times this season. I think they have a lot to play for. And I think they're going to keep this close. Jordan-Hare is a very difficult place to go. It's kind of been a stadium that haunts Alabama the past couple of seasons, ever since the kick 6 that Alabama had. And so I can see Auburn keeping this close, covering that 13-point spread, but I still like the Tide to win outright. Next game we got BYU needs to win to go to a bowl game. Oklahoma State needs to win to keep any chance of going to the Big 12 title alive. This will be 3:30 on ABC. Nick is going to take Oklahoma State. Slade, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I think Oklahoma State wins this. I think that BYU, while did look very good at the beginning of the season, I think that they've kind of sputtered out, and I think that Oklahoma State has more that they're fighting for in this game. They'll all already get their bowl game. They're fighting for that opportunity to make the Big 12 championship. So I think that they've got more to fight for. And I think they have, the slopes of going up and down and stuff. And so I think that this is where they're starting to go back up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to take the Cowboys as well. They came off that 45-3 shellacking. They looked much better last week. BYU, I think, lost their chance last week. They were at home. They were in that game against Oklahoma. I feel like they played like the better team, and then they just made way too many mistakes down the stretch there and let Oklahoma pull away and end up with a big victory. So I think BYU is going to come into this game a little defeated. And I like Oklahoma State to, again, kind of put their foot down and make their claim for the Big 12 championship in this one. Next game we got is Illinois at Northwestern. Illinois, again, needs to win to make a bowl game. Northwestern has clinched a bowl game. Very surprising sentence that we didn't think we'd be saying at the beginning of the year with, the firing of their head coach a week before the season started, essentially. So this will be 3:30 on the Big Ten Network. Nick is going to take Illinois. Slade, who do you got in this one?
Yeah, I went with Northwestern here. I think, like you said, we didn't expect anything out of this team. Here they are, bowl eligible. And also, I think that Illinois' quarterback, Altmaier, I think he's just terrible. I mean,
he hasn't played the past couple of weeks. They got a new backup.
Well, I mean, that's just even worse. I mean, he's 10 interceptions on the season and even hasn't even played the last couple games. But if he would play, I think that it would be really bad for Illinois. But yeah, I think Northwestern has just proved that they're able to rally after what you had just said, the unexpected firing of their head coach right before the season.
Yeah. I'm going to take the Illini at home. I think Bielema will get this team up and excited to play this. And this is an underrated rivalry game. A lot of people don't even think of it as a rivalry, but they both play in the state of Illinois. And I fully expect Illinois to come out and be hungry to punch that ticket to a bowl game. They're not where they wanted to be this season. They wanted to be in the Big Ten championship game. They thought they brought enough talent in to supplement what they lost last year. Clearly that hasn't been the case, but I think they're going to be hungry. And as good as Northwestern is, Illinois has looked improved with the backup quarterback in the past couple of weeks. And I really expect them to pick up a win at home here and punch their ticket to a bowl game. Next game we got is in the Virginia Commonwealth Cup. We got Virginia Tech at Virginia, 3:30 on the ACC network. Nick is going to take Virginia Tech. Slade, who do you got in this one?
I went with Virginia Tech as well. I think prior to last week, it would have been a little bit closer. I might have had to do the coin flip, but I think that they played a great game against NC State. I think NC State has, quietly turned it on this season. And so the fact that they were able to hang with them, I think that they're able to get to that bowl eligibility today. And I think that I had read a stat somewhere that said like Virginia Tech or Virginia's lost like
17 of the last 18. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that Virginia Tech is the better team. So I think that they're able to get it done today.
Yeah. I'm going to go with the Hokies as well. Again, they've really kind of turned it around the second half of the season here. Virginia is going to give them everything they can handle. We've seen a lot out of Virginia the past couple of weeks. They just beat Duke last week. Again, kind of a sentence we didn't think we'd be saying early on in the season. So this Cavalier team can cause a lot of issues for Tech, but I like Tech to go on the road and punch their ticket to a bowl game. Next up, we have the Sunshine Showdown between Florida State and Florida. This will be 7 o'clock on ESPN. Nick is going to take Florida State in this one. Slade, who do you got?
I'm going with Florida State as well. I think that this, while is very sad and unfortunate for Florida State, could not have happened at a better time if it was going to happen in the season. They played what I'm calling a high school team last week. And so he got to come in the second quarter?
Yeah.
And he played very good. He played very good. Didn't throw any interceptions, threw for over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. I think he got his warm-up game in game time because everybody was watching that game as soon as the video came out of Jordan Travis's leg just in 2 pieces.
Yeah.
So I think that he got what he needed last week. He got the practice in-game reps. And so I think this week, honestly, originally I was thinking that Florida could cover the spread, but I think Florida State's going to go out and prove that they deserve to be in the college playoff. And so I think that they're going to go out and really put it to Florida today.
Yeah. I'm going to take the Noles as well. And you had alluded to this earlier. And as soon as the injury happened, I had flashbacks of the Cardale Jones coming in and leading Ohio State to a Big Ten championship. Then he beat Alabama. Then he beat Oregon. And then all of a sudden they're national champions. We could see an underrated kind of storyline going on this season is there's a possibility with this being the last ever 14 or foreseeable future last 14 playoff. We could end up with the same 4 teams that we had in the very first 14 playoff with, out. And so how ironic would it be if we had a matching storyline as well, where the backup quarterback has to come in and lead his team to a possible national championship. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I just kind of thought, I was like, well, this is a weird
It
kind
would
of
work out
parallel.
well for an Oregon fan as well.
Yeah, would not work out well for me. But I'm going to take the Noles. I think they're going to come together. They know what they have to do going forward now. They know the doubt on them, and I think that makes them a very dangerous team. So I'm going to take the Noles. Staying in the ACC, we have an ACC-SEC matchup. Clemson has really turned it around this season. They went from national title favorites to a team that might miss a bowl game to a team that all of a sudden looks like the title contenders that we once saw, just a little too late. They're going to go on the road to South Carolina. South Carolina is fighting to make a bowl game. They have really turned it around the last half of the season as well. So this is a huge matchup. This will be 7:30 on the SEC network. Nick is going to take Clemson. Slade, who do you got?
I'm going with Clemson as well. I've bought into Sweeney's stock. I also think that South Carolina losing to Texas A&M of all teams is just not really good for their outlook. And so I think that while it does look like they've turned it around, I think they've played 3 mediocre teams the last couple weeks, and so it looks like their resume is much better.
Yeah.
But I think that Clemson goes in and takes care of business easy.
I'm gonna take South Carolina here. Again, I need to make up a game, but I really like how they played the past couple weeks under Beamer. This is gonna be a night game in South Carolina. I feel like there's gonna be a ton of hype and expectation around this game. I think this is gonna be a very hungry South Carolina team. So go ahead and give me South Carolina to pull off the huge upset at home. Maybe we even see a field storming or a meeting at the cock like Clemson likes to do on the Paul. So give me South Carolina. And the last game we're going to talk about today is UNC at NC State. What a change in events we have here. UNC is suddenly unranked. NC State into the rankings. This will be 8 o'clock on the ACC network on Saturday night. Nick is going to take UNC. Slade, who do you got in this one?
I'm going NC State. I think they're the hot team right now. I think that the fact that UNC, I mean, they lost to Virginia, then Georgia Tech, then they go out against what I'm considering a high school team in Campbell, and they whoop them up, and then they go out and lose to a backup with Duke, and then they beat Duke in overtime, and then a loss to Clemson, and so while they were 6-0, now you see them at 8-3, and so I think that NC State is turning it on at the right time. They're, like I said, I think that they've been quietly becoming one of the better teams in the ACC this year, and so I think that they're able to take care of business, especially with this being at home today. Or Saturday. I'm
going to take NC State as well. NC State, even the best UNC teams we've seen the past couple of years, when Mitch Trubisky was there, when Sam Howell was there, and it looked like it was going to be a prominent UNC team. NC State found ways to beat them. I think it was 3 years ago when 2 years ago when they played at NC State last. UNC had that game won, and all of a sudden here comes NC State with a minute left, and they beat them in overtime. And so NC State has found ways to win this game. I think, again, they're playing very determined. I can't believe how well Brennan Armstrong played last week. I've been talking trash on him all season. He finally gets benched. They bring the backup in. He looks amazing. And he decides he wants a redshirt for the rest of the season and sit out. And I'm like, NC State's not winning another game the rest of the year.
Right.
And then they looked really impressive. They let Virginia Tech back into that game late last week. But still, I really like how NC State is playing right now. I don't have enough belief in the UNC defense. And so I'm going to take NC State here to pick up a huge victory at home and kind of put a stamp on the end of their season. So that'll wrap up this week's edition of Out of the Tunnel. As always, we thank you guys so much for joining us. We had a ton of fun bringing you this episode. As always, it's always nice when Slade and I get to do it together. Nick had to work today, so unfortunately he wasn't here. If we would have done this on Saturday morning, he would have been here, but we like to be difficult and make it hard for him to make it to events. So, but we will be back next Saturday to preview Conference Championship weekend. All the huge implications that weekend will carry as well. Slade and I will also do our Blitz Boys podcast. That'll be out on its normal Thursday night this week. We'll preview some of the early Conference Championship games, like whoever plays Washington in the Pac-12 title. So we'll talk about that. So make sure you guys check that out as always. And thank you so much for your support, and we will see you guys in the next video.
Yes, sir.